What is lunch today?
I don't know, food of some sort.
Don't forget about our interact meeting.
Don't forget about your interact meeting.
I'm going to forget.
Look at that.
That's a crazy statement.
Mr. Hart, your mom is my fourth grade
Yeah, that's why she recognized you.
counselor. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
All right, so remember, mom's watching. There's always a harder watching you, whether it's me or my mom or my dad. So just be ready. All right. You need anything pulled up? Just tell me.
Okay, yeah, well, I think we'll watch some stuff on YouTube in a minute. But, cool. How's everyone doing this morning? Good. Good. Feel like there's some new faces. I think like half of you weren't here on Tuesday, so
Probably.
it's good to see some new people. How's everyone feeling about their pitches? We have some ideas. Does anyone not have an idea? You can raise your hand if you don't have an idea.
It's all right. Be a little bit off.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, just it really can be anything. We'll watch a few videos today, kind of about filmmaking in general. Just kind of get some ideas turning, maybe more about actual making films. Some of the videos I really like, they're called Every Frame a Painting, and they're just like cool. If you're interested in watching more, there's like a whole bunch of them. We'll just watch a couple today. They're really fun and kind of just make you look at film kind of a new, more academic way, which can be kind of fun. Yeah. The other thing I want to do today is figure out what we have for equipment. If anyone has their own cameras or their experience with editing software, I just kind of want to get an idea of where we're at, and then we'll probably kind of split up groups in that way. I know a lot of us will be using our iPhones, but maybe if someone has a newer iPhone and has a better camera, we'll kind of make a note of that. Does anyone have a camera?
I'll keep that list going.
Yeah, what kind of camera do you have?
I forget exactly, but it's like a Canon, like one of its like
Little
yeah,
DSLR
Yeah,
Canon?
it's a DSLR.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You got an SD card that you can
Yeah.
plop into your computer when it's done. Cool. Does anyone else have a camera or used a camera before? Yeah, you have one?
Yeah, I have a like a camcorder.
Little camcorder? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And a tripod with it.
And a tripod? Sweet. Cool.
I also have a Canon I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Canon.
It's a decent sized Canon, and I got 2 lenses.
Okay. Is it like a DSLR? Like looks like a
Is it
photo
a
camera?
photo? Or is it a video?
Both. Can do both,
Both,
but it's
yeah.
mainly photo. I'd say.
Yeah. That's great. A lot of the photo cameras now just shoot great video, so that's all good. Cool. So we do have maybe 2 or 3 cameras that we could split up.
Yeah?
Well,
You do?
well,
Okay.
A Canon like video too?
Cool. Okay. Well, maybe on Monday, if you guys remember, it'd be sweet. You could bring those in. I can just take a look at them and see if they're going to be useful. Otherwise, iPhones are great, and we'll kind of maybe try to get some of those tripod adapters so we can put our iPhones on tripods and use that for interviews. It'll be we'll kind of figure that out.
Are these tripod adapters something I can make or we can make, or is that
I think
like?
they're just like these little guys.
Okay.
So we would, you have one here. I have a couple. I think I can could go to Walmart and buy a bunch.
Unfortunately, my
couple of,
3D printer is still broken, so I can't just whip out a bunch of.
oh, well, that'd be cool. Yeah. But that could be an easy thing to get. They're like $1.
Cool.
Usually. So, yeah. Sounds good. Thanks for there. Cool.
How about this? Someone have an idea that we can like pretend build a quick little like pitch for it, like how you would do that? Why don't we use mine so then yours doesn't get taken, and as you develop it and mature it and like marinate it all weekend, which I know you'll be doing instead of watching Outer Banks finish up, which the ending's terrible. The whole show is, but it's a great job. So here's my thing. What do I want to be when I grow up? So, what are some of the things we got to look at first as the director, writer, artist?
Probably your age.
Yeah, so like, why is a 50-year-old dude from Montana asking what he wants to be when he grows up? But what's the irony or the spin that we could work on when I pitch this to you, say on Monday?
Probably like
Humor definitely probably goes into it. Like, wait, what? I thought you had this figured out by now.
Yeah, some themes are really good, yeah.
Yeah, maybe like a pretty stark acknowledgement at the beginning of like your childhood, what you wanted to be when you were a child. And
Marine biologist.
contrast with what it is, where you are now, and then what you want to be now.
Oh, cool. So like sort of some of this from here to here.
Yeah.
What it used to be like, what it's like now. Yeah, cool. What else could I roll with on that? Like nothing, there's no wrong things. Yeah?
Yeah.
Alright.
Never mind.
Yeah, so like I'm going in this like, especially you guys, you're at like a crucial time. Like, and I want my audience to probably be everybody, right, in the world, but that's, you know, I can really kind of pin it in, like, ooh, high school students. So maybe that's who all I show it to, or whatever I deliver it to. So I'm like pinning in on you, like you're sort of at this time, like, oh man, I got to start dealing with like career or college, whatever I'm gonna plan on doing next year. Which, you know, starts to get a little foggy and a little exciting too. So I could kind of pitch it to like, hey, you're about to go through this thing where you're supposed to figure out what you want to be before you actually know, or you actually even figure out what classes and like all that stuff. But like Miss Shirley did in second grade with some of you, if you were here, you got that picture taken? Like with a baseball bat or a glove or a football. David, what was
I
yours?
think I have that in my room.
Elijah still does. His is a baseball player. He hasn't played in 2 years. Hates the game now for some reason. But do you remember what yours was?
It was football.
Football, yeah. See? Hey, you never know, right? You guys, it's still available. Is it still available for me? What I wanted to be? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, over the course of these last 35, 40 years, I've changed that marine biology. I realized I get sick on boats. Probably ain't gonna work. I couldn't pass organic chemistry in college. That kind of put a stump in it. And then I later developed this first mountain, I call it, that I've climbed. And I'd like to embark on the second peak or mountain. You know, maybe I use that to use David Brooks, who's an author, about, he has a book called The Second Mountain, and maybe I kind of pitch it to you like, I'm kind of feeling at the top here, and I need to start coming down off this first mountain, but I'm ready to start going up the second mountain. So maybe I use that as a place like manipulate you that you're about to go up that first mountain hill, and I play that as a way. You know, you got to kind of hit the, what do you want to hit there to get people to believe in you? Yeah, hit the emotions, right? All right.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's like something to think about is the genre or the theme. Like someone mentioned humor. You can kind of think about in your pitch, you're going to kind of try to simplify it so people are like, when you sit down to watch it, like, what's it going to look like? Are we going to be laughing? Is it, you know, going to be more of a tragedy, or is it going to be more interesting? Yeah.
Like thinking about what you want to get out of it, but also like the message that you want it to have.
Yeah, kind of what you want to tell your audience, and that's a good point. Mr. Harder made is who is your audience? You're like, who's going to watch this? And is it you guys, is it your peers? Maybe that might be one of the more obvious answers, but you could also be like, maybe it's more historical. Maybe you're trying to get into something more personal. You want to tell a personal story, which is always, I think, difficult, kind of to look inward and to try to pull a story from your own life. But there's some really awesome ones that are done about people who either they get into something with their family or maybe with, you know, their ancestors or their personal history. That can be a cool thing to explore as well. Some of the people are still coming up with ideas, and maybe you want to change your idea. Don't feel that just because you have one that you have to stick with it come Monday if things change. And yeah, if you have multiple ideas, you can write them down and definitely pitch one. But if you want to talk about other ones, just let me know. You can
Micah?
do that too. Yeah.
Elijah and I watched your film that I missed the other day in class.
Yeah.
And he you know, as a curious young teenager. Wait, so he went there? He went to California to film this?
Right.
Answer,
Yes.
yes.
Drove.
We're probably not going to be going to California or South America. Maybe Mexico. You have an opportunity to film some things coming up in your life or wherever you're going.
Yeah.
But he was also like, I didn't know Mike was even into horses. And then so as a 13-year-old, you're like, that's what you see, right? But the deeper theme was what?
Yeah. yeah, was the wildfire issue.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, I'm not really interested in horses. I've
Yeah.
never been a horse person.
Me neither.
I just got
Terrified
into this. Yeah, I just got into, like, you can get into an idea that maybe seems like you're not an expert in, but you don't know much about, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
You're like, I just wanna try something new. Like with that, I didn't really know very much about fire either, but I got into that topic as well. And then just decided to drive 20 hours out to California to try to figure out what was going on. But for you guys, it's another thing in your pitch to try to think about the practicality of it as well. If you were like, I wanna pitch this idea where I go, do something that just, we only have a couple of weeks, right? So, if you're already going somewhere, that could be a cool idea, but it's probably gonna be local, right? And it could be interview focused, as I was talking about, or it can be, activity, but they're all gonna be kind of character driven. You're gonna have a person, or, it could be an animal, could be your main character, but most likely it's gonna be a person, that you're gonna kind of follow in this journey, whatever that story arc might be. I think what I wanna do next is show a couple of videos.
Sweet.
That these ones kind of pertain just to filmmaking in general, but I think it connects to documentary. I think there's a lot of overlap. Cool, just give me a minute to get that set up.
We can go this way, maybe.
Cool.
I guess we don't have to be signed in, but.
That's okay, so it'll record it, or. This video. Oh, yeah.
Bye-bye. If you still haven't filled out that sheet with the, Google Sheet and Google Classroom, Charlie, then here's a great opportunity because we're about to watch another film. Wasn't from last week, but throw it in there. We can also take it off my school account because that means it might be.
I think it'll.
Everybody get rolling on Bro? It's easy when I've read it a couple years ago already, but such a great story. Yeah? Yeah. Great. Go back and tell the story. And like from now till then, which is a couple weeks, right? You have to start like figuring out, like, I know you haven't been there yet, but like, what's your story you want to tell? And then get some ideas jotted down and figure out your team, like who's, got the gear, filming, how we gotta travel to another country, bring the gear, whether it's just on phones or whatever. It's a great opportunity to tell the story of that trip that you're about to do. Who is that? A couple, 7 of you in here? 6, 7 of you?
What's this trip?
You guys, I don't know what it is.
We're going
I haven't even been told yet.
Pescadero, Mexico.
We're going to Pescadero. I've been to Pescadero.
Yeah, and we're building a house for his mother and her.
Who's all going? When do we leave?
March 20th, 18th?
Okay, cool. And you're there for a week,
Yeah.
building like a house.
Yes.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, that'd be a great thing. That's kind of it'd be a big project, but definitely something to keep in mind. Be excited to hear more about that on Monday. Whoever might pitch that idea. Cool. So these videos are made by this person who just kind of analyzes directors and editors and different films, and we just kind of talk about them. This is about Buster Keaton, The Art of the Gag. It's just kind of basically how you do comedy in film. It's about 8 minutes long, so we'll go ahead and start it and we can talk about it after.
Hi, my name is Tony, and this is Every Frame of Painting. There are some filmmakers who are so influential that no matter where you look, you see traces of them everywhere. I see this filmmaker's framing in the works of Wes Anderson, his acrobatics and stunts in Jackie Chan, and his deadpan posture in Bill Murray. He, of course, is Buster Keaton, one of the 3 great silent comedians.
He was, as we're now beginning to realize, the greatest of all the clowns in the history of the cinema.
And nearly 100 years later, I think he still has plenty to teach us about visual comedy. So today, let's take a look at how the master builds a gag. Ready? Let's go. The first thing you need to know about visual comedy is that you have to tell your story through action. Keaton was a visual storyteller, and he never liked it when other directors told their story through the title cards.
The average picture used 240 titles. That was about the average.
240 was the average.
Yes, and the most I ever used was 56.
He avoided title cards by focusing on gesture and pantomime. In this shot, you never find out what these two are talking about. Everything you need to know is conveyed through the table and their body language.
But what you have to say, you have to communicate to the audience in only one way. Through action.
That's right. We eliminated subtitles just as fast as we could if we could possibly tell it in action.
Keaton believed that each gesture you did should be unique. Never do the same thing twice. Every single fall is an opportunity for creativity.
The thing that's different about a Virgo vacation home, you always have the
But once you know the action, we come to the second problem. Where do you put the camera? Visual gags generally work best from one particular angle. And if you change the angle, then you're changing the gag, and it might not work as well. Finding the right angle is a matter of trial and error. So let's take a look at 2 possible camera placements for the same joke. Here's the first one. And here's the second. You'll notice in the first angle, the car takes up most of the frame, and we don't get a clear look at Buster until he turns around. But in the second angle, the car's placed in the background, and we always have a clear view of his face. This split second, where he doesn't know what's happening but we do, that's much better from over here. And in the first angle, the framing splits our attention. Our eyes want to look at his face and the sign at the same time. But after reframing the scene, our eyes naturally look at him, then the sign, and back to him. Much better.
Is this like a series?
Now we come to the third question.
About 20.
What are the rules of this particular world?
That's it. Yeah, that's sweet.
Buster's world is flat and governed by one law. If the camera can't see it, then the characters can't see it either. In Buster's world, the characters are limited by the sides of the frame and by what's visible to us, the audience. And this allows him to do jokes that make sense visually, but not logically. A lot of his gags are about human movement in the flat world. He can go to the right, to the left, up, down, away from the lens, or towards it. Look familiar?
She's been murdered.
And you think I did it?
Like Wes Anderson, Buster Keaton found humor in geometry. He often placed the camera further back so you could see the shape of a joke. There are circles, triangles, parallel lines, and of course, the shape of the frame itself, the rectangle. I think staging like this is great because it encourages the audience to look around the frame and see the humor for themselves. In this shot, think about where your eyes are looking. Now where's he? Some of these gags have their roots in vaudeville and are designed to play like magic tricks. And like all great magic tricks, part of the fun is trying to guess how it was done. Keaton had a name for gags like these. He called them impossible gags. They're some of his most inventive and surreal jokes. But as a storyteller, he found them tricky because they broke the rules of his world.
We had to stop doing impossible gags and what we call cartoon gags. We lost all of that when we started making feature pictures. They had to be believable, or your story wouldn't hold up.
So instead, he focused on what he called the natural gag, the joke that emerges organically from the character and the situation. Consider what he does with this door. Keaton claimed that for visual comedy, you had to keep yourself open to improvisation.
How much of it was planned and how much came out in the actual doing? How much was improvised, you know?
Well, as a rule, about 50% you have in your mind before you start the picture, and the rest you develop as you're making it.
Sometimes he would find a joke he liked so much that he would do a callback to it later. But other times, jokes that he planned beforehand wouldn't work on the day, so he would just get rid of them.
Because they don't stand up and they don't work well. And the accidental ones come.
He was supposed to make this jump, but since he missed, he decided to keep the mistake and build on it.
So you seldom got a scene like that good the second time. Johnny got him that first one.
Maybe that's one of the reasons there was so much laughter in the house the other night. I mean, the younger people and I had this feeling that what we're seeing was happening now. That it happened only once. It was not something that was pre-done and done and done.
And that brings us to the last thing about Buster Keaton, and his most famous rule. Never fake a gag. For Keaton, there was only one way to convince the audience that what they were seeing was real. He had to actually do it. Without cutting. He was so strict about this that he once said, either we get this in one shot, or we throw out the gag. And it's why he remains vital nearly 100 years later. Not just for his skill, but for his integrity. That's really him. And no advancement in technology can mimic this. Even now, we're amazed when filmmakers actually do it for real. But I think he did it better 95 years ago. So no matter how many times you've seen someone else pay homage to him, nothing beats the real thing.
You guys don't need to go out and do some of these risky things,
Stunts.
right?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Pretty fun. Yeah, those are really great. Tony, the guy who makes these, yeah, there's about.
What's the name of that series again?
Every Frame of Painting.
Every Frame of Painting.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the most, all that was a lot of fun. I think one of the most interesting or most important takeaways from that was the line you said about the 50% rule, which is like, you're basically gonna plan out, I think in documentary maybe it's more like 25%. Like you don't have that much, you have a lot planned out, you might think you have it 100%, but then when you actually get into it, you like show up on the day. If you had 50% planned out, then that's awesome. That's probably about as much as you're gonna get. So it's just like kind of being willing to adapt and get into get into the project and kind of let the project guide you. Like if you go down to Mexico and you want to make a story about building a house there, but then say you meet someone who you're building a house for, and you start talking to them, and their story is actually way more interesting than this one house you're building, you might pivot and be like, actually, we should focus on them, or something like along those lines. And being willing to adapt and not be like, especially at this stage when you're learning and trying it for the first time, just being willing to kind of let the story guide you a little bit.
And you guys at film school and university have to spend a lot of time with this series?
Yeah, we watched a bunch of these. A lot of my professors really like them. They're great little tidbits into a lot of them are about fiction.
There, now you have
and
homework
stuff.
for the weekend.
Yeah,
Mom,
you can watch.
Dad,
I cruise through all these.
Carter said, I gotta watch the whole series. That's
Yeah.
what I tell my wife why we're going to Red Lodge.
Yeah.
I gotta get caught up for class.
Let's see. Another good one. Yeah, there's some more. Mr. Keach.
Jackie Chan, how to do action film.
Yeah, that's a good one. Where the
Oh, you're right.
Any other like series out there or any other
I'm trying to
streaming
think.
place that you guys spend a lot of time with?
You know, not. This was the main one that we watched. We watched some. Like, I'm trying to remember if I had some other ones. Let's see.
Channel not approved for BSSD. Well, you might have to go. I just approved it. I don't know if that ever works. So you might have to use your, your bipolar account,
Oh, gotcha.
which I use. Which you guys use all the time. Ooh.
Did you know they?
Joel and Ethan Coen shot, reverse shot. Oh.
Yeah, that's a good one. There's another one on
And then
editing
the
that I
last
was
one
trying
was
to
kinda
find,
good.
but this was another good one.
This one was my best.
Yeah, we can watch one more.
How does the editor think and feel?
Yeah, that was. Should have signed that one. Maybe.
Alright, there you go. How does the editor think and feel from every frame of painting? 6 years ago, 2.4 mil views. How does an editor think and feel? I'll put the link in Manage Back. And obviously your BSSD may not work, but you can use your other burner account.
Well, and this one's called composing movement. So we're gonna watch this one too.
Hi, my name is Tony, and this is Every Frame of Painting. So here's a fundamental question. When you're judging a shot, what's the first thing you look for? Is it balance, leading lines, golden ratio, color, light, shapes? I think these are all essential, and they're all part of good images. But there's one thing I always notice first. Movement.
For me, Kurosawa is the Beethoven movie directors. It's that recognizable full sound that Beethoven had that is so unmistakable.
A Kurosawa film moves like no one else's. Each one is a masterclass in different types of motion and also ways to combine them. Over a career spanning half a century, he made 30 films, and in all of them, the movement is surprising and cinematic. Wow. If you'd like to see the names of the films, press the CC button below. So, what types of movement did he like? First, there's the movement of nature. In every one of his films, the background of the shot features some kind of weather. Wind, water, fire, smoke, snow. One advantage of this approach is that shots have a lot of visual interest. Even when people are still, there's that rain in the background to draw your eye.
Rain is a real emotional trigger that works in any film. So anything that's excessive, because it gives you another layer that the audience can relate to sensually.
Second, there's the movement of groups. Kurosawa films usually feature large groups of people who either band together or split apart. Crowds like this are really cinematic. When you put this many people in a shot, any emotion feels big. If you want a good reaction shot, try using 4 people. Or 25. And if you want something really big, which brings us to number 3, the movement of individuals. One of my favorite things about Kurosawa is that his blocking is unrealistic and exaggerated. If someone is nervous, they pace left and right. If they're outraged, they stand straight up. And if they're ashamed, he would often tell his actors to pick one gesture for their character and repeat it throughout the film. That way, the audience can quickly see who's who and how they're feeling. Number 4, movement of the camera. One of the hallmarks of Kurosawa's style are his fluid camera moves that go from a close-up to a full shot to an over-the-shoulder in a single unbroken take. I did another essay about these shots called the Spielberg Oneer, but what's important here is that every camera move has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Just by itself, this move tells a story. And last, there's movement of the cut. Kurosawa is one of the few directors who worked as his own editor. One of the reasons his movies just flow is that he tends to cut on movement. Often, you're paying so much attention to someone who's moving that you don't see the edit. When he finishes a scene, he switches the rhythm, usually by ending on something static, and then cutting straight into movement. By switching up the rhythm, he keeps you on your toes, because you can't guess the next cut. So with all that, let's break down one scene and study the motion. This scene comes from Seven Samurai. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. See how long it takes you to figure it out. Ready? The first shot shows the whole village, then just the important characters, then just the samurai. Right about here, most people get what's happening. As Kikuchiyo sits down, his action ripples outwards to affect the whole village. Notice how much the wind adds to the scene. Even when people are still, there's that little bit of wind to spice up the frame. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, let's jump 60 years into the future. This is the Avengers. Here, we start with a camera move into an establishing shot. But this time,
these were in Phil Coulson's jacket.
We get dialogue right away. Throughout this scene, the only things that move are the camera and Nick Fury. Even though we have weather outside and actors in the background, none of them are used. Notice that the camera movement doesn't have a beginning or an end, and there's no variation. Each shot goes in the exact same direction.
Maybe I had that coming.
But in Seven Samurai, the camera moves have a distinct beginning, middle, and end. And each shot changes the direction from the previous one. As he climbs up, Kurosawa uses the movement of the flag to cut smoothly into this angle. All 7 samurai and their banner together. This scene has every type of movement, carefully pieced together and spaced throughout. The weather, the group, the individual, the camera, the cut. But this scene tells its story mostly through dialogue.
Called the Avengers Initiative.
Sure, the camera moves, but it's pointless movement. For all the money that was put into it, this scene feels flat.
It's an old-fashioned notion.
But how could you improve a scene like this? Well, if you know what the scene's about, try to express it through movement. Start with the character. How are they feeling? Is there any way the actor can convey that by moving? Okay, maybe too much. Let's be more subtle. Take the feeling that's inside the character and bring it out through the background. If a character is angry and menacing, you can do this. Or if she's simmering with resentment. Another option is to contrast one person against the group. So if somebody suffers a very public humiliation, this works. Or if they're looking for a needle in a haystack. You can use camera movement to convey excitement. You can cut on movement to show surprise. and you can combine every type of motion into one amazing image. By the way, you don't need to put every type of movement in every shot. That's just tiring. But there's a nice middle ground with lots of variation and subtlety, and you won't know what works best until you try it. If you combine the right motion and the right emotion, you get something cinematic.
But just for me, I look at this as 2-3 times a year to feel, oh wow, that's why I wanted to be a filmmaker, and look what I'm doing now. Special effects, and then another movie about special effects, and then the third movie about special effects.
Now pick any of his films, go to any scene, and watch how everything moves together.
You know, it's the visual stimulation that hits the audience. And that's the reason for film. Otherwise, we should just turn the light out and call it radio.
I think we just talked about, but just for, I guess for tomorrow, watch the editing one. It's called, what was it called again?
I put the link in ManageBack.
Okay, sweet.
So maybe for the weekend?
Oh, yeah.
It's only a
We
couple
can talk
minutes,
about it.
8-10 minutes.
Yeah, it's a quick one. I mean, I don't know, I think if you really like these, feel free to watch more of them. I feel like pretty easy, just cruise through them.
I'm binging the whole series.
Yeah,